Good evening and welcome to the November 5th, 2025 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Paper copies of the agenda are available for those here in person, and the full packet is available on our website. Reviewing our agenda, first we'll consider our consent agenda. There are 5 items on that agenda. After our consent agenda, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we'll apply certain rules regarding public comments. We'll do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Here are the rules. 1, each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we'll accept public comment of any length in writing. 2, individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. 3, all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. And 4, we reserve the right to mute, remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during the public comment period is not allowed. We ask that you give your full name and address, if you like, for our before your comments for the commission. We can respond to the. Don't read that, Patrick. Please also know that comments received by the commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comments on the spot, but if you'll leave your contact information with county staff, we will try and get your specific questions answered. After that, we'll move to our regular agenda. There are 4 items on our regular agenda. We'll start with a consideration of a 15-year 95% neighborhood revitalization for the rehabilitation of property at 612 New Hampshire first. Then we'll move on to the 2025-26 service agreement with Mental Health of America of the Heartland. Our third item is the Douglas County Youth Apprenticeship Challenge Grant, and we'll finish our regular business with a Heritage Partner Needs Assessment report. For each action item, we'll hear from staff or the applicant, followed by questions from the commission, then open the item up for public comment relevant to that item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring the item back to the commission for further discussion and a vote. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. And tonight, we actually start before our consent agenda with a proclamation, and Commissioner Willie's going to read that proclamation.
We have a proclamation for Operation Greenlight, November 4 through 11, 2025. Whereas the residents of Douglas County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for the people who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces, and whereas the contributions and sacrifices of those who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our citizens, and whereas Douglas County seeks to honor individuals who have made countless sacrifices for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all, and whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, religious groups, civil service, and by functioning as county veteran service officers in the 29 states to help fellow former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future. And whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experiencing high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life. And whereas active military service members transitioning from military service are at high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And whereas the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Greenlight for veterans. And whereas Douglas County appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Now, therefore, the Board of Douglas County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim November 4 through 11, 2025 as Operation Greenlight Week. Douglas County urges all citizens to join in this observation, adopted this 5th day of November, 2025.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Do we have someone who'd like to speak on this?
Commissioners, yeah, we've asked one of our favorite veterans, our Director of Emergency Management, Robert Benecki, to come forward and speak on veterans in Douglas County's government.
As you know, I'm your Emergency Management Director. I served 22 years, both active duty and Navy Reserve, retired in 2004. On behalf of the 60 Douglas County employees who have proudly served in our nation's armed forces, thank you for this meaningful proclamation and for honoring the contributions of veterans. As a veteran, I deeply appreciate the county's participation in Operation Greenlight. By shining a light on those who have worn the uniform, you affirm the value of their service, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to our safety and freedom. It means a great deal to be recognized, appreciated, and supported by our community. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your service. We have your proclamation here. All right. we'll
Mr.
move-
Chair, would
Yes.
it be all right to ask the other veterans
Yes,
and
good
their
call.
immediate family to
Yeah.
stand if they would choose to and be recognized?
Do we have any other veterans?
Yes, we do.
Ah. Those are good people. All right, our consent agenda. Commissioners, would any of you like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none, any members of the public like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Anyone online, Sarah? All right, commissioners, we'll bring it back and I welcome motions.
Commissioner Reed, move to approve 2.1 through 2.5.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Move on to general public comment. If you'd like to provide general public comment, now is the time. I kind of fell apart there a little bit. I don't know what happened. And if you'd like to give us your name and address, you're welcome to, but that's not required. Does anybody like to give public comment?
John Ems, zip 6604. That's as far as I'll go. Today, I wanted to say thank you to Jill for helping Douglas County meet the rigorous by name data standards for one population. Your efforts have ensured that Douglas County is the second community in the state of Kansas to achieve this standard. I'm excited for the near future results. To wit, for those citizens that are out there, knowing each single person's consented data file with their name, homeless history, health needs, and housing needs will allow a substantial amount of derived population data. It is important to understand the subpopulations of homeless precursors, namely seniors, violence survivors, those with substance use disorders, those with severe persistent mental illnesses, and other various disabilities. Douglas County can now track the changing size, composition, and dynamics of this population and these subpopulations. This information enables the prioritization of resources and insight into whether efforts are helping to drive homeless numbers down. I anticipate these results soonest. Community Solutions, a consultancy in the homeless industry, has long identified the key challenges in by name data collection, from coordination among providers to inflow and outflow tracking. Currently, there are 527 single adults in the homeless system in Douglas County, and the numbers have been rising steadily for the last 40 months, as reported in the Built for Zero database. Tracking subpopulation health needs, service needs, and treatment effectiveness will assist in understanding resource utilization. Where are we most and least impactful in measurably solving homelessness? As stated in Built for Zero, we seek effective solutions so homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. I look forward to the demographic results when subpopulation system outcomes can be disaggregated, broken down, and disparities in system outcomes across demographic groups are analyzed to reveal treatment results. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Anyone online? Okay. We'll close public comment and move on to our regular agenda. And the first item is to consider county participation in a 15-year, 95% neighborhood revitalization area, NRA, to conduct historic rehabilitation. What's going on the property at 612 New Hampshire Street?
Thank you, Commissioners. Representatives of applicant Patrick Watkins is here. He's going to kick off the presentation. And also we've got representatives from the city of Lawrence that'll do the second part of the presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Patrick Watkins. I'm an attorney here in town. I'm here on behalf of the applicant 612 New Hampshire LLC. It's a company owned by Matthew Gilhausen. Matt is here with us tonight, along with Connor Trainer, architect on the project. I'm pleased to be here to provide you with some background on this project at the Reuter Oregon buildings. These buildings present a unique and exciting opportunity to return two important downtown buildings to productive use. These buildings are large, but they qualify for incentives for several reasons. They're downtown buildings. If you read in the paper, downtown is still very much at risk. It's just this type of investment that downtown needs. These are historic resources. Both properties are on the historic registers. This is important in part because we're compelled to save them, but also because the historic tax credit program makes this project feasible. The buildings meet the ambitious goals for downtown. This project meets with the Downtown Master Plan, the Development Code, the city's Historic Resources Code, ADA, building codes, the variety of requirements that we need. I want to take a moment just to look at the history of the buildings. It's what makes this project special. Wilder Brothers Shirt Factory was built in 1882. Building was constructed just 20 years after Quantrill's raid, just a few years after the completion of the Kaw River Dam. It was just one of a few buildings that was powered by the Kaw River Dam. The Wilder Brothers at their height produced 22,000 shirts annually. They employed 70 factory workers, 27 salespeople. The Reuter Organ Factor relocated to Lawrence in 1919 and built the north structure as an organ assembly room. Here's a picture from around 1950. 1927, Reuter built Little Red, the building connected by a walkway and a tunnel. By 1948, Reuter was the only organ company between St. Louis and California. Reuter continued to operate at the site until 2001. At their height, they employed over 125 employees, constructed over 60 organs a year. You might already know this, but most of the churches in Lawrence are filled with Reuter organs. It's what makes Lawrence one of the organ capitals of the world. People from all over the world visit Lawrence for its organs. Since 2001, the building's been vacant. You can see a little photo history to give you a little idea of what happened in the past, what this building looked like at the time. As a preservation project, these photos are utilized to help reconstruct this building. This is the assembly room on the north side. And this is the actual assembly of an organ. The owner has assembled a capable development team for the rehab project. It's comprehensive. Project required an emergency structural repair in 2021. And thankfully, today we're no longer in a position to wait and see whether this building's standing. There's a range of additional structural work that will take place, all new wood posts and beams throughout, tuck pointing and masonry on both sides of every wall, metal frame that will be erected in the assembly room. There's new systems, obviously, throughout the building. It's a comprehensive rehab project. If you have any questions about the rehab, I'm sure the architect can respond. There's no replacement for seeing the building in person. If anyone would like to have a tour, we're more than happy to take you through. The greater challenge for the owner is creating a navigable path for financial feasibility on the project. There's some complexity to the financing arrangements. This is an opportunity zone project, which leverages a special funding source that enables the project to benefit from special financing. It's a state and federal historic tax credit project. It's a critical component of this, and a tremendous amount of work has gone towards securing that incentive.
Patrick, do you want to give us a definition for the opportunity zone?
The opportunity zone was created as part of a tax bill, I think. I can't remember the first year, but it had some requirements where you had to make an investment in certain zones. And after you acquired it, you had requirements to make an additional investment. But the key incentive offered by the opportunity zone is that you get out of capital gains in the future. It is something that helps the financing of this project. I think Matt could probably respond to that directly too.
Is that a state of Kansas program or a federal program?
It's a federal program.
Thanks.
Mhm. There's a variety of underwriting requirements and there's private financing involved. Under every concept for the use of these buildings, the costs for rehab are too great to create market rate returns. This is very much an altruistic endeavor by the developer. Some form of public participation is needed to pull off this project. And we crafted the incentive application about a year ago in an attempt to share the burden as appropriately as possible. We leaned in to a community improvement district, the opportunity to charge additional sales tax so that the sales tax that is created at the project, the normal sales tax still gets distributed in the same way, but the CID allows you to create additional that will go back to the developer. That's really one of the larger steps that we could take to avoid the possibility of eating into property taxes or sales taxes, but it's not enough. The NRA is a program designed not to touch the existing sales tax base, but only the incremental, and we are asking for 95%. We received the support of the city. We look forward to your feedback on this. If it was not needed, we would not be here. But this is a worthy project. If you have any questions about the need for this incentive, obviously Baker Tilly has done a thorough report, can respond to the but-for analysis and the need. We're here for your support. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Questions for Patrick? Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chair, just Commissioner Anderson and I, along with Sean, our Deputy Administrator, did take the applicant up on that offer and had a tour of the facility to see some of the work that's happened to date.
Good evening. Tom Calico with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. We're the financial advisor to the city of Lawrence. And I'm here tonight because the city's asked me to give you the benefit of the extensive due diligence that they asked us to perform on this request for a financial incentive. But before I launch into that, Brandon did ask also that I share with you, just in the spirit of kind of helping you know what's going on and what might be coming up before you in the future. This is a list of currently active incentive requests that the city has. I'm sure staff can make this available to you. You'll see that for each of these projects, there's a link that takes you to the staff reports that have been completed so far on these projects. So if you want to learn more about them, you can have that opportunity. I won't spend a whole lot of time repeating what was previously presented so well. This is, I think you know the location of the project, and Patrick gave you a good sense of the scope of the project. This is the sources and uses for the project. I guess I would highlight here, particularly on the uses, you can see the construction makes up the vast majority of the uses of the project. And you'll note the federal and state historic tax credits that Patrick spoke of just a moment ago. So the requested incentive, as noted, is a neighborhood revitalization area, 95% 15-year property tax rebate on, again, the incremental increase in value. So the base value is protected. This is a incentive created by state statute, and to make it work, it requires the proactive participation of all the participating taxing entities. So in this case, it's proposed that it be a city, county, and school district incentive. Thus are appearing before you tonight. It's eligible under the state statute due to the building's deterioration and obsolescence. The total gross value of the incentive is estimated at about $1.4 million. The Community Improvement District that Patrick spoke of is a 2% add-on sales tax, as he noted. So it's additional to the existing sales taxes up to a period of 22 years. It's estimated that with the current development program, that would generate about $1.25 million over the life. Now, it's been requested to authorize the maximum amount up to $3 million. like I said, our estimate right now is at 1.25, but if the project were to develop somewhat differently, have greater sales tax, it would allow it to go up to that 3 million. And I'll come back to that point when I talk about the rate of return. And then that final incentive is a sales tax exemption on construction materials, which we estimate would value about $360,000.
And of these three tools, the county only weighs in on the neighborhood revitalization area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the city has already passed the community improvement district and the sales tax exemption, and those don't come to us. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
So part of the due diligence that the city asks us to generally perform on financial incentives is a but-for analysis. So this analysis, as the name would imply, asks the question, but for the requested incentives, would the project likely happen in the current marketplace? I want to note it's not a feasibility study. A feasibility study speaks to the markets, the trade areas' likelihood to absorb the additional uses. So it's not a feasibility study. The risk of feasibility is borne in this case by the applicant. And as with all forward-looking financial forecasts, we all know that actual results are likely to vary somewhat. But we've tried to be as reasonable as we could in all the assumptions. So here's the general approach. We ask for a pro forma from the applicant. So basically it's a business plan, and we ask for all the basis of all the assumptions that went into that plan. And the first thing we do is evaluate the assumptions related to costs. We also look at the reasonableness of all the assumptions that go into the various revenues. And then we consider a hypothetical sale of the asset. And why do we do that? Doesn't necessarily mean that the applicant intends to sell the asset at some point, but the standard means of valuing a real estate or an income producing real estate asset in the industry is the identification of an internal rate of return. And the way you get to an internal rate of return is you assume a hypothetical sale at some point in the future, and that allows you to then basically assign a value to the asset. So we determine that internal rate of return without an incentive, and then compare that return to what other investors would seek in terms of a return to make that investment worthwhile. So in other words, without an incentive, can the project reach a market level rate of return? All right, so turning first to the costs. We looked at the acquisition cost of the property, and that was at $12 per square foot, substantially below what we saw in the market. And you'll see here on the table, we've cited all of our sources. That's not unexpected, right? This is a project that we, require a significant investment in order to make it usable. So the fact that, the cost, the investment was less than market is not surprising at all. We looked at the actual construction and rehabilitation. This one's a little challenging, right? This is a unique project. There aren't a whole lot of Reuters buildings out there or people, taking them on. So the applicant's estimate was $286 per square foot. So for means of just giving some sense of comparison, we use the RS Means construction estimator to see what would be the cost of building a new building somewhat, as similar as we can, right? This is a unique building, but as similar as we can to this building. And that came out to $206 per square foot. That gives us a sense that at 286, this seems like a pretty reasonable number considering both the complexity and all of the historic preservation requirements that are going to come with this project. We looked at the developer fee, which is roughly 7.7% of the total project cost. The industry norm is 5 to 10%, so we felt that was reasonable. Similarly, soft costs and other expenses were about 7.75%. Again, the industry standard is 5 to 10%, so we felt that was reasonable as well. So we didn't suggest any changes to any of those assumptions. Turning now to project revenues and hypothetical sale. You've got the building's going to be converted into a mix of residential and commercial uses. So we looked at the rents assumed for the residential portion. That was assumed at $2.10 per square foot. The market for Lawrence is about 129 to 174. So it's a little bit higher than what we'd expect in the market. So potentially overstating the return, not understating it, which is, more the concern in the but-for analysis is, are we understating the return? In this particular case, it would have the effect of overstating the return. So from that standpoint, from a but-for standpoint, we were like, no, okay, this, we can live with this. And it may reflect, it is going to create a unique place to live in Lawrence. It has some incredible views. So it's possible. So again, we didn't suggest any change to that assumption. On the commercial side, the rents varied from an assumption of $6 a square foot to 27. The market, according to CoStar, is about 1680. So when you look at the average of what's assumed at 1694, again, we felt that was reasonable. We did make a few modifications to the developer's pro forma. They had assumed residential and commercial vacancy at 2.7 and 3.7 respectively. Based on what we're seeing, we modified, they assumed 7. We modified it to what we believe is the market area average of 2.7 and 3.7. They'd assumed annual growth rate at 2 and 2.5%. That's a little bit high, but again, it has the effect of overstating the return, not understating. So we left that as is. And then lastly, the capitalization rate, which is part of what you determine the value of that hypothetical sale. We increased that from 7 to 8% based on what we're seeing in the market. And that does have the effect actually of lowering the return. Okay, so this is where we end up. If you're looking at the slide, the gray area represents what is the current market rate of return range for projects of this type, according to the PwC Real Estate Investor Survey from earlier in the year. So it ranges, the market range ranges from 7.25% to 11%. Without an incentive, this project produces a negative return. So it doesn't even show up on the graph. With the incentive, it's about a 1.3% rate of return, well below what we would see as what the market would require for an investment of this type. So our conclusion is that it passes the but-for test, not likely to happen without the requested incentive. If they were to realize that higher CID request that I spoke about earlier, it still doesn't push the rate of return into the market range. So just stepping back and thinking big picture, the results are not surprising. This building has, some substantial challenges. It has substantial deterioration. The rehabilitation of it requires meeting some fairly stringent historic preservation requirements. And, they're currently working with elevated costs of capital. So not too surprising there. So the requested county participation is adoption of a cooperative agreement. That cooperative agreement is modeled on agreements you've seen recently and previously, 9 Apartments, Penn Street Lofts, 9 Apartments. Well, we got first and second, it should be. That cooperative agreement references the NRA plan, which I believe you were provided. The second piece of due diligence that the city asked us to perform is fiscal impact. Towards that analysis, the city utilizes the total impact software from impact data sources. That software calculates fiscal impact based on various assumptions about inputs as far as cost of the project and multiplier effects. We assume the $17 million capital investment, 2% annual real property value growth, 3 management employees and 1 mechanical supervisory position, and that existing tax rates are held constant for the 25-year evaluation period, and a 5% discount to get to the present value of of the benefits and costs. And you can see that at the end of that, it shows a $825,000 present value benefit to the county over that period of time. I hope that was helpful to you. Happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Questions, commissioners?
I have a question, and it might actually be for Brandon. I'm not positive, but you can kind of consult with the team there. So we did get a chance to take a look at this property, and we've had several of these kinds of requests come to us over the years, and this one seems highly unusual in the amount of investment that's been made already before it comes to this point. Can you just, why don't you speak to that as far as, is that perception correct?
So yes, it is a little unusual to have this kind of cost, but this is a unique case, right? This building was suffering a catastrophic failure, and the developer stepped in and stabilized the building. It does raise the question of, well, does it pass the but-for test? I think in this particular case, it does. This, like I say, this building, we wouldn't even be probably standing here talking about this opportunity were it not for that initial investment. And I don't think that initial investment, clearly by the results of our analysis, that initial investment doesn't indicate that this project was doable without the incentives.
Thank you.
Has this developer brought other requests before the city or the county before?
No.
Thank you.
Matt, are you responding to a specific question that you've been asked?
Yes.
Which question? This question?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. Come on up. You have to talk to the mic.
Yeah, the specific question about have we come to the commission or the city looking for incentives in the past? The answer is no. We have developed 5 or 10 buildings around downtown, the Silas and Maddie's building across the street. We did a bunch of development in the East Lawrence Arts District, the Sunflower Outdoor and Bike buildings, and haven't felt like it was appropriate for us to make the ask. But this particular project, we just couldn't do it without the help of the city and the county and the school district. So appreciate you guys considering it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners, before we take public comment on this item? All right. If you'd like to provide public comment, we ask you come up and do that now. Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close public comment. Bring it back to the commission for any further questions, comments, motions.
Just to kind of give some context around my question there, because it seemed unusual to have a developer who would, put in the risk ahead of time before coming to us for partnering. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to the intent of it. I think without that investment, timely investment, we would be looking at a pile of stones and not at a building that could be preserved. So that's one of the things that struck me with I've known about the building for a long time, just being around in Lawrence, and always kicked myself that I didn't take on the Rotary Oregon Company used to offer tours to just community people to go in and see it when they were operating, and missed it because I didn't get in there before 2001. So just the amount of instability that building had before this time, it's hard to make money off of a building like that. So recognize that.
And the intent for my question was I wanted to understand if the developer had come before the city or the county before requesting any dollars, just to kind of understand prior developments and any requests in the past. So I appreciate knowing that the developer has invested in our community and in Douglas County, and has made significant contributions to our community and is investing in this particular project, and now is coming before the city and the county and the school district for this particular project because it is appears to be a worthwhile project and is looking for partnership.
My comments are the developer has much greater risk than the county does in this project. And what's not been stated is that along with this project, the projects across the street in the old Lawrence Journal World building are going to revitalize that corner of downtown, and the benefits far exceed the risk on the county's part. So I'm in favor of it.
And I know I have said before, I'm not a big fan of the 95% request. That always seems really steep to me that, and I know that this is not county dollars that go towards a project. Dollars do not leave the county and go to this project or any other under the NRA model. It's just, not capping the, not securing the total gain of what would happen in the property tax for that period of time, in this case, 15 years. But this property, I can pretty well visualize that it does not happen without that help. I hope it can still happen. I mean, there's not a huge amount of return on investment coming for the property overall under what we've been given. So I do very much believe that this project wouldn't happen without the incentives. And many of these others that we look at in the past were related to affordable housing. That's not the community benefit that we're seeing from this one. It's really the preservation of a really unique historic building in an important part of town.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'm ready. I'm excited to see it. As Commissioner Reed, I move to approve the county's participation in a 15-year, 95% neighborhood revitalization area to conduct historic rehabilitation on the property at 612 New Hampshire Street, Lawrence, Kansas, and authorize the county administrator to execute a cooperative agreement with the city of Lawrence, Douglas County, and USD 497 for the administration of duties related to the 612 New Hampshire Street neighborhood revitalization area.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you all. All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is a 2025-26 service agreement with Mental Health America of the Heartland. Jill?
Thanks, Commissioners. You have a cover memo that outlines what was being proposed before you tonight, which is a 2025 and 2026 service agreement with Mental Health America of the Heartland. Mental Health America of the Heartland is a new partner to Douglas County. As I overview in the cover memo, the support that Mental Health America is positioned to provide on behalf of Douglas County is directly associated with the Flexible Housing Pool Program, which was launched this year. As initially, we had a contract with the Burton Ash Community Mental Health Center to provide the necessary supportive services that go along with that. The Flexible Housing Program is a locally funded permanent supportive housing voucher. So the funding to support it is everything that you would think of when you think of a voucher, in that there's funding for rent and utilities that is administered by the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority. But then unique to this voucher is the necessary supportive services that are relevant to the priority population that this program is targeted to serve. This is a direct extension of the goal priority population that we have in our strategic plan to end chronic homelessness in Douglas County. So it's exclusively focused on serving folks that have a history of chronic homelessness, are at risk of homelessness with significant vulnerability, including but not limited to physical disabilities, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. or were recently hospitalized, incarcerated, or homeless with high risk of housing instability, and for whom providing rental assistance will prevent homelessness. These are the categories of folks that referrals come in for. More often than not, folks check many of these boxes, but what we lead with is that history of chronic homelessness and the underlying vulnerabilities that go along with that. But for the supportive housing services, they would continue to cycle in and out of chronic homelessness. So what we've learned in the months since this program has been in operation is that the level of acuity of the folks that we're hoping to serve is significant. And because of that, the level of support and the staffing needs to be appropriate to meet their needs. After several discussions with staff that support the Flexible Housing Pool Program that help review referrals, talk about ensuring housing stability and case planning for folks to be successful. We came to the conclusion and in conversation with the Burton Nash Community Mental Health Center that the capacity just wasn't there with that organization to continue to be in the supportive housing provider role. So in August of this year, we provided the required 90-day notice that was in an MOU that was adopted for the initial part of this program to launch. And that 90 days will be up in November 21st. Mental Health America has been having conversations with Douglas County for several years, though. They've been a provider in the region and the state for a long time. Bob Tryansky and I have been observing their work. They're actively involved in the Kansas Balance of State Continuum of Care. I outline a lot of the programs that they provide currently that are almost exact replicas of what we're talking about here with this program. We're really looking forward to bringing a new partner into our community to provide some capacity and some subject matter expertise in this area. And I feel really confident that we might be off to a good start as we get started on the remainder of this year. And we look to a full year of 2026 to work with a new partner. Simon Mesmer and Sue Lewis from Mental Health America of the Heartland are here. And I wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, because they are a new partner, I wanted to ask them to come up and introduce themselves. And then we can all stand for questions that you might have. Simon, see if you go up to the podium and just hit the green button and just brief introductions, that would be great.
Just a note that it looks like the green light's on, so
Oh,
you don't
good.
need to touch the button.
All right.
You're good to go.
So don't turn it off. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name's Sue Lewis. I'm the president and CEO of Mental Health America of the Heartland, just completing my 28th year with the agency. Not quite as old as the agency. It has a 109-year history of providing information, advocacy, education, and support related to all aspects of mental health and mental illness. While we're based in Kansas City, Kansas, we provide these services across Kansas, across Missouri, and beyond. We were among the very first organizations to provide permanent supportive housing over 26 years ago, recognizing that as a significant need after serving people with mental illness through both representative payee services and also through housing voucher processing programs. Over the past 26 years, we've expanded to multiple sites, multiple communities, multiple ownership and leasing structures. We've been recognized and received funding to actually train and support other Kansas City-based nonprofits in replicating our model. I myself am a 28-year resident of Lawrence, who commutes daily to Kansas City. I am personally very, very excited to be partnering with Lawrence and Douglas County, with all of the partners that we have already met, at least on Zoom, to bring success to the Flexible Housing Pool Program, and more importantly, the people it serves, and to better my hometown.
Good evening, Simon Mesmer. I don't have a whole lot to add to what Sue just said. I could talk a little bit about how we do our work and why I'm personally excited to be here in Douglas County. And that reason is that you all are taking an approach that I've seen work. I joined MHA from a health insurance company. where too often we had members, patients who just did not have adequate housing. Services are absolutely necessary to help these kinds of folks, but they aren't sufficient. In particular, traditional mental health services are not sufficient. That's what we do. We step in to fill those gaps that traditional mental health cannot do. So I'm the guy that will be losing sleep when these tenants aren't doing well and the neighbors are unhappy. I'm the person that you'll call to deploy staff, get that done. We will relentlessly and doggedly help you all to keep these folks housed.
Question, you said you work in other cities in Kansas. Can you give us some of those cities?
Yes, we have property that we own in Leavenworth. That one is near and dear to my heart. We got that build finished right after I became CEO. Property in Kansas City, Missouri, which we owned and operated for a number of years, and then worked in partnership with a new owner for a number more. We have Section 811 property, about 14 units in Kansas City, Kansas. The Leavenworth property, primarily veterans, in 10 units. And I know Jill has toured that property, and I believe Bob may have as well. We also do what is called master leasing in Ottawa, Emporia, and Manhattan. All of that based out of Kansas City. We've also worked in Topeka as well.
Do you have any agreements with other counties like the agreement that you're entering here?
We do not. We are typically HUD funded for those programs. The agreements we have are generally informal with the neighbors, who are awfully happy to have our people there. I love to talk about our very first renovation project on the Kansas City, Missouri side. We have staff in that building. And after about, maybe a month, the neighborhood association said they did not want our staff coming anymore. They wanted the residents to come. These were formerly chronically homeless people, and the neighborhood wanted our residents because the residents kept the property clean. We had the nicest looking lawn on the block. In Leavenworth, within probably 6 months of building that particular property, we had 2 local businesses that just every year sent us a donation unrequested, because our property was adjacent to some of their property. And so we like to say we help people build the lives under the roof. It's very easy to put somebody in housing. It's very hard to keep them there. And we have tenants who have been housed since, well, one of my favorite guys, first day in, 2005. He's still there. It's Forever Homes.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you both. Appreciate it. We'll open this up for public comment. Is there anybody who'd like to provide public comment on this item?
This is about a service agreement with the county, and the county has expectations for the kind of information and behavior they want the partner to provide. And I searched the service agreement as written, and I didn't find anything related to the by name data. And that's a new part. I think that we want metrics from the partners, and we want them to engage in case conferencing with other partners. And we want them to share data with the county on inflow and outflow tracking, so that we can make use of that data in terms of how our resources are being used and whether we're successful with the homeless. So there's some 29 separate metrics in the program that we've been honored with to be part of. That data defines a set of metrics that all of our partners and all of the service agreements should be surfacing for the benefit of the county to do analysis on, so that we can understand how we're successful and in what way we're treating the homeless and how the homeless are getting better. That's my thought. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Anyone online? Okay. Jill, this isn't the service agreement. The actual agreement that we make. Is it the service agreement that we make with them?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And from a functional standpoint, the flexible housing pool program is entered in HMIS. It's a program in the homelessness management information system. The way that the first step in the referral process for the flexible housing pool program, is to have an individual entered into the coordinated entry system. So that data that's step one. It's baked in that it will be documented in the HMIS system. That's just not flagged in the service agreement in terms of the services that they're provided and as Mental Health America engages with clients, they will be entering notes in HMIS so that if another care provider comes across an individual that Mental Health America is working with in one of these vouchers, they'll also, and they have access to the HMIS system, they'll be able to see what else is happening with that individual. But one of our initial steps with this program was to have it entered into the HMIS system as an official program within our coordinated entry system, because that's how all the referrals come from. We make sure that we're starting with what is their assessment, their score that assesses vulnerability. And then we look at those other factors that I identified in the cover memo: documentation of chronic homelessness, incarceration, those different barriers.
Are you referring to number 20?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. We were really focused on the actual supportive services with this. The HMIS system engagement is baked into the process, so to speak. So I apologize that wasn't made more clear in this, and I appreciate John bringing that up. But one of the metrics that we do follow that's on the dashboard is those inflows and outflows. And we're trying to break cycles of chronic homelessness by maintaining housing for folks. And that's been one of our biggest challenges, is we cannot break that cycle.
And number 20 does refer to keeping all records regarding program supportive services in the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, as required by Douglas County funding regulations.
That's true. And as Sue mentioned, all the programs that historically Mental Health America has administered are all HUD-funded programs, which means they're very versed at entering data and utilizing HMIS.
How do we expect people to get selected for this program? Will the county be selecting those folks? Will Mental Health America have a hand in that?
So first step is making sure that they have an assessment in the coordinated entry system, and that assessment is it's a fairly extensive set of questions to assess an individual's vulnerability. An assessment has to be done at least once a year, just to make sure that we're doing an accurate reflection of what's going on. Has the individual experienced a set of being incarcerated? Do they have a child? Things like that. Again, somebody's vulnerability changes. So that's the first step. We look at their score. So those referrals are made in coordinated entry when we meet once a week. The coordinated entry is facilitated on a weekly basis, and folks are referred to the flexible housing pool if they have a high score, if they have any of those other factors that are listed on there. Once that referral is made, our regional coordinator, Sarah Kinder, makes a list and puts that and shares that list with. We've put together a flexible housing referral program team, and I provide administrative just support and facilitation for that group. But it's folks from the Lawrence Community Shelter. It is our regional homeless coordinator. It is members of the homelessness response team. It is staff from Burton Nash Community Mental Health Center, tenants to homeowners. I'm probably forgetting some folks that are on there as well, but it's all of the agencies that have a direct role in working with a lot of these folks. And, I mentioned tenants to homeowners. More often than not, they're the ones that are accepting referrals for these folks and when they have available units. And Mental Health America will be joining that referral team. So there's no hard and fast rules for how referrals are made. It's a lot of conversation around what are their underlying vulnerabilities. are they going to be successful once they're housed? We want it to be low barrier, but it is helpful when an individual has been consistently going to night by night at Lawrence Community Shelter, consistently doing the 90-day program. They've been they've been consistently even meeting with somebody from the homelessness response team. We've been really successful with some of the folks that have been housed through Flex Pool, that they're regularly meeting with somebody from HRT, and they're saying, I'm ready to move forward with the housing.
So Jill, you mentioned that the assessment asks if someone has a child.
That's part of the coordinated entry assessment. Yep.
And so then are we tracking K through 12? Are we tracking if we have kids or families across our county that are homeless? And then if so, are we tracking how those kiddos are getting to school? If they are getting to school, are we tracking where those kids are? Since we know that the Lawrence shelter does not accept children, are we tracking where those kids are sleeping, where they are staying, if they're in their car, if they are going to Family Promise?
I think we could have a whole session just about that. And I'm glad you brought it up because we are due to have a fresh conversation around family shelter. But on our dashboard, you can see families is one of the subpopulations that we track. So we do have that data. I don't know enough about the data that our McKinney-Vento liaisons at the schools have. But Commissioner Kelly might have some of that information from his past time. But I think we'd be happy to have a fresh conversation around that. Again, like we need to provide an update on that, and it'd be a great opportunity to bring. Family Promise has some new leadership. Somebody that's been there for a good amount of time, but she's the new executive director and they've got some exciting things happening. So we'd be happy to talk through all those things. I will say that one of the individuals that has been housed through the flexible housing program is a single mom with 2 young kids that were living in an unsheltered situation prior to that. And they're in attendance to homeowners home at this point. So we're able to take those referrals should be in coordinated entry. It's just a matter of where can they be housed.
And Commissioner Anderson, I would just add some, based on my experience, I mean, there's a lot of federal guidelines around children experiencing homelessness, and specifically if they're enrolled in schools. And so if they're if they're on the by name list, being talked about at coordinated entry, have anybody anywhere that's entered information into HMIS, like questions about children are a significant part of that data set. And then it sort of triggers different laws, protections and or resources related to the school district. And if they're, if it's not school age children, then there might be other resources that apply. So I think it's probably not something that's a particularly zeroed in on data point of discussion, like in the larger ecosystem, but it's very much baked into like the HMIS data collection, and it triggers certain other protections and resources and possibilities related to that, related to having children in the family.
Thank you. Yeah, it was some conversations that actually came up this past week in Leadership Lawrence 2026. So we had the privilege of having USD 497 superintendent come and talk to us. And through some of our breakout sessions, we talked about K through 12 and some of the families and kiddos that are experiencing homelessness. And so I think it's just a great opportunity for us to understand better some of our data sets and if we have opportunities to kind of dig a little bit deeper and really understand some of those populations that are experiencing homelessness and where we can come together and really determine how we can support our families and our kids and just really ensure that they are getting to school and that they are graduating, right? And how we can just better support as a community. And as we bring on new community partners, ensuring that they're aware of our challenges and how they can support as they come into our ecosystem.
Commissioners, if there's no other questions, I'm happy to make a motion. Move to authorize the county administrator to sign a FY 2025 and FY 2026 service agreement with Mental Health America of Heartland to provide supportive housing services for the Douglas County Flexible Housing Pool Program.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the third item on our regular agenda, which is the Douglas County Youth Apprenticeship Challenge Grant. And Jill, I believe you're back for more.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioners. This item looks a lot like the Child Care Scholarship Challenge Grant that you saw a couple weeks ago. The commission approved one-time funding for $62,500 to provide access to pre-apprenticeship and technical career education through Peasley Technical Center. We wanted to make sure that we were following up with you all about this item, which is similar to the Child Care Scholarship Grant, was one of the strategies in the Anti-Poverty Community Health Plan. In the time that when we last discussed this item as part of the budget process, I wanted to make sure that I followed up with you all on some of the questions that came up in those budget deliberations around what role are the school districts playing in terms of supporting students financially and bridging that gap and connecting them to these opportunities at Peasley Tech and other places. We've been primarily focused on Peasley Tech for this strategy area, but I had a great conversation with somebody at the public health CHIP event a couple weeks ago about those other career technical education opportunities that we could be observing in this work as well, that I need to be more mindful of, that I appreciated. But what we know is that there are more students seeking and interested in those pre-apprenticeship and technical education opportunities at Peasley Tech than Peasley Tech is able to support. So the idea around the challenge grant was to do just that Douglas County would set aside the $62,500 one time. And as the Peasley Promise initiative gets underway to support a larger endowment fund at Peasley, these dollars would just be one small component of that. But what they would do is they would highlight that this is a component of a larger community health improvement plan that is trying to connect young adults to what we believe will be future careers that will be living wage jobs. Another reason why Peasley is a key partner here, a lot because of the focus on living wage career pathways. But sorry, I was remiss in that I wanted to make sure I shared that conversations have been had with Eudora School District and the Lawrence School District. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have Baldwin yet. I'm going to get there as well. And hopefully we'll have some larger conversations amongst superintendents about just understanding what are those career pathways, what is the programming that's in place through their CTE programs to make sure that those pathways are in place, and understanding what is the financial add of the school districts to support this work. What we learned in Eudora is that the Eudora Schools Foundation is supplementing funding for students to participate in these programs. We learned from the meeting with Dr. Swift and her team that their contribution at this point is providing staff support for instruction at Peasley Tech. Dr. Swift shared with us that they're really getting a lot more organized around how they can have these career pathways better identified, and just figuring out how to be more intentional about partnerships with Peasley Tech. And I know Kevin's here, and I don't know if Kevin, if you want to share any of the conversations that you've had with Dr. Swift and others. It's up to you if you want to or not.
Kevin Kelly, 1725 East 30th Street, Lawrence, Kansas. Yeah, we've had quite a number of conversations, and actually some actions, not just conversations. In fact, met last week with the Lawrence Schools Foundation. They're working with us to help this a long-term solution for, as you know, in certain communities, there's funding available through community colleges for their kids to do these kind of programs. And so this creates the same opportunity for kids from Douglas County. We have had great help with from Eudora on helping us get this program off the ground. We started with that first class last year. We have 5 classes this year. Our goal is to serve 400 high school kids a year by 2030. And so we're moving that way through a lot of different partnerships and different ways of how we can ensure that no kid gets turned away because they can't afford to go to school.
That's all we have, Commissioners. We're happy to stand for questions.
Questions, Commissioner?
I have a question for, since you're here and willing to talk to us about this. I know you've been great about working with other school districts, not just kind of our big 3 and 4 that we talk about a lot, but, Shawnee Heights and Santa Fe Trail and some of those that have Douglas County kids in it still available to come for programming through Peasley Tech. But as we have county dollars that are used for this matching for kind of a larger picture, how do we know that those county dollars are helping Douglas County kids when some of our school districts cross county lines?
Yeah, and our partner high schools are basically any high school that has kids that live in Douglas County. Now, the vast majority of the kids that we get are from 4 school districts, but we do have kids from the private schools. We do have kids that come from, from school districts that are headquartered outside of Douglas County, but we never thought there was a very equitable way to deal with those students. So we just included them all as partners. We have, I'm currently have some requests out for funding to help support this match with a longer term goal of being financially self-sufficient, over the next several years through building an endowment and to ensure that none of these kids and no one from low income household in Douglas County, adults also get turned away.
I think Kevin's sometimes a little modest. I think he has a pretty good reputation from not just Douglas County school districts, but other surrounding districts that know about the programs offered at Peasley Tech. So I think even, you have a pretty good reputation and those career counselors will know that they can contact even if they're from out of county. And then when they find out they're in county, then I think then there's resources there.
And we do have, we've really, I'll mention one employee in particular, Charlie Laus, who came to us from the school district after 33 years. She's done a great job building relationships with districts, throughout the area and helping us to be able to provide pathways for students in programs that are becoming a little more unique and unusual. We started an aviation program this fall. We're starting some other new one, diesel technician and other things. So we're trying to find ways to introduce students that we get a lot of students in these programs that don't necessarily like the classroom. And so this is a good fit for those kids that need their hands on something.
And then for USD 348.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And the foundation also at Baldwin is working with us.
Okay.
The school foundation is also working with us to help support their kids.
Okay. All right. So there is do we have kids enrolled or is there like a plan to engage Baldwin? Because I know in the past, we haven't had a whole lot of Baldwin kids that have really been engaged.
We have, I think there's 8 or 9 signed up for January.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've got that. I think we've got that working now.
All right.
And so we would expect that it will probably, be in the top 3 school districts in terms of students that attend Peasley.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, I see that the tuition is $2,500 per student.
Mm-hmm.
Is any of that being paid by the school district?
We are getting funded by the school district. I mean, for example, we got, I'm going to use one of our first classes as an example. that program, that first group of kids was like $22,000. And in that case, Eudora Schools Foundation contributed $10,000.
Okay. Can you walk me through some of the apprenticeships that you've had recently or that and I'm specifically interested if they're tied to a KSDE, CTE pathway?
They are. And in both in construction, in transportation, in the auto technology, we've aligned them with the pathways so that they're really more kind of the capstone for most of those pathways. So they come to us, they go through this program in their junior or senior year, last semester, first semester. And then the next step, the next step is is that we actually get them out working in their senior year, their last semester in organizations. And that's part of the apprenticeship model.
And has Peaslee worked with school districts to help establish that pathway? Because it requires, you use the word capstone, that end of program application level course. And every pathway has that application level course. Are these apprenticeship opportunities that are part of an approved pathway in every school district?
As far as I know, that's what the arrangements that we made with them this is their final steps. I mean, some of them may have been in a career exploration early on, maybe sophomore year, early junior year, but that this fulfills their requirement. And it also fulfills a graduation requirement. And now for students that entered the 10th grade this year, there's a requirement that they have a workplace experience. There's a requirement that they have a industry recognized credential and a post-secondary experience. They get all three of those through these programs.
That's great. I just want to make sure that the kids who are doing the application level course have the technical skill that's required to be successful in the application level course. And when I say application, that is the apprenticeship here.
Right.
And so those technical level courses you're telling me are being provided by local school districts before they come to the apprenticeship program at Peaslee Tech, right?
Right. For example, a couple of them from 497 sophomore year, they do some welding auto combination is where they really get the first step. Then they have to make they can't do welding and auto with us when they come through. So they make a decision. And we actually have several students from 497 that have opted actually to enter the adult program at night, which is another great option for kids that have a lot of activities during the day and can't fit. So I think we have 11 high school students in the night programs now following that path.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Take public comment on this item. Is anyone here to provide public comment? Anyone online? Okay. Bring it back up for comments. I'm going to start with a couple of comments here. And I brought this up at the budget meeting and I'm bringing it up again, is I want to make sure that these are, it does look like the county is picking up some of the tab of what I think the school district should be paying for. I appreciate the work in our poverty group. Jill, is USD 497 on the CHIP? That steering committee, are they involved in that?
Not currently, no.
Okay. And so part of my challenge with this is that it seems to address it sort of on the back end, and I would like to see a more integrated system. I am a huge proponent of career and tech ed. I have over a decade of work in it. I had a lot of involvement at Peaslee Tech and at the College and Career Center. I'm concerned that I would be much more supportive of this if I understood the role that USD 497, who will have a lot of students in the program, is playing on the development and support of this. I appreciate what Kevin says, that we do have technical opportunities there, but I'd really like to see USD 497 standing with Kevin, or other school districts standing with Kevin, sharing with us how our support helps build on what they're already doing. And maybe you've had those meetings, Jill, and understand that better than it's being explained to me tonight.
No, but I think that's what we had envisioned. If we can convene the superintendents, that's something we've been talking about for a good amount of time. I think there's other items we wanted to discuss with them, behavioral health, truancy, and this is one of them. We can make that happen though.
Yeah, and I've and I also just think it's they've had some staffing changes, but I think it's good for the commission to continue to sort of publicly talk about how other partners should continue to be at the table financially, not just at a table to talk about how it's done, but financially, so that it doesn't come on the taxpayers to pay for that, or even schools' foundations, because school districts do receive funds for these services. And so it's totally appropriate for them to be spent in this way. But, school resources are tight.
Yeah, I want to make sure that all of the apprenticeship programs that we're providing are tied to a approved career and technical education program, so that we are getting the dollars that would follow those kids to that apprenticeship program. The way this is sort of set up is that kids could do the apprenticeship program, and we're leaving dollars on the table that the state would pay us in 0.5 funding. Maybe we have the program, maybe we don't, but I would just like to see more of that articulated when we come forward with a request. Our tax dollars go to it now, right? And so school funding comes from our local taxes. We want to maximize the dollar return we get from the state for the really valuable 0.5 funding. This seems to be addressing a need totally, but I want to make sure that we've got that program articulated.
Would your interest be to table this discussion? It doesn't trigger until January 1st, 2026, and bring those partners to the table for that larger conversation?
Yeah, and even funneling it around saying, yes, that would be my request, and being very specific about which programs are available for it, right? So Kevin mentioned it's manufacturing welding program. We do have technical level courses in that. The district could make sure that they have the application level course on that. And then if there was a difference, and I will, at $2,500, that's not going to be enough, right? So even the 0.5 funding they're getting, it's just part of it. It's not going to be, so we'll need to provide some support, but let's maximize the dollars we're getting from the state level because we want to make sure this goes as far as possible.
I think I'd be curious to understand if that funding model, or the courses, or the career tracks are the same across various school districts, or if there are differences there, and just what's the ability for not just USD 497, but for each of them to come to the table, what's their willingness and interest?
Yeah, you make a great point, because it's not possible for every district to provide the technical level courses that are needed to be provided to this apprenticeship. We really could leverage the facilities at Peaslee Tech, the facilities of the College and Career Center, the technical education side at Eudora, to create a more county-wide system for preparing students for these careers. But that will require collaboration, and collaboration is hard. And so it may be that a student who is in Eudora or is in Lawrence, let me do it the other way, that's in Lawrence, goes to Eudora for that technical level course, and then does the apprenticeship through Peaslee Tech. That can totally be done, and we've done it before, but it does require those schools to work together. And maybe this funding is enough leverage to make that happen.
I would agree. And to that extent, right, when we even think about Baldwin and the fact that this will be the first year moving into 2026 that they'll actually have 8 students engaged I think bringing all of those superintendents to the table and having them have that conversation about what that could look like, I think it could even further open up the door for more opportunities for those students, like you said, Commissioner Kelly, to then see what opportunities actually exist within the entire like education ecosystem and where potential gaps are, but then where opportunities are across the entire landscape, and knowing that each of our school systems did raise their mill levy, right? And so they made those choices. So I think that does provide an opportunity then, like you said, to go back to them and ask them to financially weigh in and financially come to the table and bring their resources to the table and to collaborate and partner.
The question I probably could have asked earlier, but this is one-time dollars, and it's set up as a matching fund. So those dollars would only be pulled down if there's another partner that comes to the table. The example given was the Lawrence Restaurant Association.
That was a typo. I apologize. That was one from I saved the wrong
I
version.
thought that was awfully nice of them to be.
I
engaged with
apologize.
this.
No, I added the wrong attachment to that, that wasn't saved, then that pulled out from the childcare scholarship.
Childcare. So
I apologize.
I'd seen this before. They're very generous people.
I know. yeah.
Okay, so appreciate that clarification. So what kinds of businesses are likely, what's that model to take these matching funds to businesses and get them to contribute to a larger pool of funding? And maybe that's a Kevin question.
My understanding is it's industry partners, existing industry partners that are in the community. I know that McFarland Aviation has been a huge booster related to that aviation program that Kevin mentioned, and just some of the other industry partners that Peasley's aligned with. AMAR is one that I'm thinking of, but I'm sure Kevin can think of others. The existing industries that are in Douglas County that are banking on having that pipeline of folks, of workers coming out.
As well as the schools foundations that are contributing.
Yes, yes.
But these dollars that Patrick, or Commissioner, that you're talking about from the state are you thinking that those would qualify as matching funds to pull down these dollars, or just that this would be separate?
I don't really know because I don't know whether they have pathways that have those application level courses in them, right? If they haven't built the pathway, then we don't know if they can access those dollars. And it seems technical, but it's really not. I mean, and I think in a lot of places they have it already. I just want to understand from the school districts, before we commit county dollars to it, tell me what you're providing as a school district to that effort. And if they're not involved in the CHIP, like that's a serious concern I have, is like, how are they part of solving our workforce issues as a county-wide partnership, or are they doing it in isolation? I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Kevin and I have had some experience in this, and I think this is a good opportunity to bring those school districts in and say, tell me how your pathway is working and how you're supporting kids. Because if they're not making it easy for kids to do this program, then we're just putting money in it, right? And the kids need to have the skills. I do want to say, like, the Lawrence Restaurant Association would be a great partner on this, right? They need talented workers, but kids are going to have some technical skills before they can go work at Mass Street Fish House in an apprenticeship role. And we have to make sure kids have access to those courses, and we're not just throwing them in, and Kevin would never do this, throwing them at an apprenticeship without the technical skills they need. So, yeah.
Well, I'm very comfortable to bring those school district partners to the table and revisit the conversation and have more information comes with that. Jill and Kevin, have we given you enough information to be able to have those conversations and bring them forward?
I think so. I'm happy to do that work. Yeah. I appreciate having the conversation in public. It helps, helps motivate folks to come to the table as well.
And I think we should bring the Restaurant Association to the table.
I mean, it can work. You're not wrong.
Well, but it would be a good place to bring the Chamber of Commerce to the table, right?
Correct.
And that includes the Baldwin Chamber of Commerce and the Eudora Chamber of Commerce, and say, look, if you're trying to expand your workforce, like, how are you engaged in that? Because that should be a group that's listed on here as a possible donor when it comes to economic development. We can't grow our business tax base if we don't have the workers to do the work. So
You need a motion.
I mean,
It's just tabled.
yeah, we
You've
can
not
just
voted
table
to
it.
approve the allocation yet, so to me, we don't have a motion to move forward at this point, and you've given staff direction to continue working on it.
Are we okay, commissioners? Yep. Okay. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the last item, which is the Heritage Partners Needs Assessment Report.
Caitlin Ammerline, our Heritage Conservation Coordinator, is going to kick us off.
Good evening, commissioners. Wow, what a fun slate of county business we have tonight. I'm happy to pull it back full circle a little bit, talking on heritage. I'm Caitlin Ammerlin, the Heritage Conservation Coordinator for Douglas County, and I'm just going to give a brief introduction before I turn it over to Sarah Bishop from Coneflower Consulting. But we're here tonight to present the results of the Heritage Partners Needs Assessment. This is a project that was started in April of this year and was really building on lots of conversations we've had over the past several years about the current state of the heritage organizations that the county supports and what continued partnership might look like. There's been some increased partnerships, and so we really wanted to kind of start the conversation about what that partnership can look like moving forward, what the needs are of the system, what the county's role can and should be moving forward or should not be, and similar to the partners themselves. So just wanted to highlight that the scope of this project in particular is focused just on those 6 partners plus the Heritage Conservation Council that the county supports through the community partner process. And yeah, again, this is kind of the first step in sort of this formal strategic thinking of what the county supports through these dollars. So with that, I will turn it over to Sarah to again give the overview of their findings. I'll be available for any questions. We also have several partners who have stuck with us through the evening. So feel free to ask them any questions directly as well for their experience in the process. And I think that's all that I had. Oh yes, I'll get you all set up. On this.
Great. Thank you. Hello, commissioners. Thanks so much for having me here tonight. And thank you, Caitlin. It's been such an honor to work with Caitlin Ammerlin, who is just fantastic. And to work with all of our many Douglas County Heritage partners. Coneflower Consulting is a local, largely nonprofit, but also government entity and university consulting firm. And we do a lot of needs assessments, but I would say heritage is an area of expertise for us. So again, very honored to have the chance to do this with the county and with these incredible partners. I'll take you through the slides. So this is your list of heritage partners here in Douglas County. There are 7 of them, and they are all doing incredible work. The Clinton Lake Historical Society, the Douglas County Heritage Conservation Council, the Douglas County Historical Society, and of course, the Watkins Museum of History, which is closely tied to it, the Eudora Historical Society and Eudora Museum, the Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area, which works very closely with Douglas County, as you know, but also has a much larger purview throughout the region, the Lecompton Historical Society, and the Santa Fe Trail Historical Society. So these were our 7 partners. And as we'll discuss, these partners work together often, know each other well, but this is a loose coalition. So this coalition of partners has not been formally or officially established. The methods for the needs assessment included organizational research on each of the partners. And in our report that we submitted to the county, you'll see individual reports at the back of that full report on each of the different organizations. It also included research in the state of the field, really looking at the nonprofit sector more broadly, but also the heritage sector, by which I mean history museums, historical societies, historic sites. We did a basic strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges analysis. You may have heard of a SWOT analysis where people say threats instead of challenges. We think that's a little harsh at Coneflower Consulting. So we swap it out for challenges. We did this through various methods, including a couple of surveys. We did a public survey that was responded to by 110 people. They were just general public audience members. That survey was open for 2 months from August 1st to September 30th of this year. We also surveyed stakeholders of these different organizations. These were people who were nominated by the organizations for having a deep knowledge of these different organizations' work, their culture. Unfortunately, we only got 16 responses, but I think many of the stakeholders who were nominated participated in the other methods, which I'll share now. So in addition to those surveys, we did focus groups. So we did 6-hour-long focus groups where we invited those stakeholders from the different organizations. So we did one for each organization except for the Heritage Conservation Council and Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area. And that's one that we combined just because it was a little bit easier to do it that way. Those organizations are slightly different from the other 5 organizations because they're not as public facing in terms of doing their own programs, creating their own exhibits. And then finally, we also did a number of individual phone interviews with the stakeholders. We interviewed 17 different stakeholders from across the organizations for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the stakeholder. Through this process, we were able to understand the strengths of these organizations, and they are many, they are abundant. There is a deep community commitment from each of these organizations. They are all powered by passionate individuals, many of them who are volunteers, don't get paid at all for their work. Many of them are long serving, and they're often centered, these organizations, around 1 or 2 key leaders. We also saw that there's an abundance of local stories here in Douglas County that these different groups are sharing. They are stewarding these stories, helping to preserve them, making sure that they are going to be safe for the future so we can continue to interpret them. These include stories about Bleeding Kansas, Indigenous communities, immigrant narratives. It's a lot of different kinds of stories that are being told. We feel that there's successful local engagement. All of the partners have very strong connections with a variety of area organizations, from public schools to public libraries, city governments, university. There's a lot of partnership going on. And then there's some emerging collaborations. These groups are often already working together, maybe not as all 7 organizations, but 1 or 2 are partnering not infrequently. And they're also often working on grants together, which is exciting, getting funding from Freedom's Frontier or for the ARPA funds that the county was administering through, in part, the Heritage Conservation Council. Weaknesses that we found through this process include volunteer burnout and leadership gaps. And I would say this is not something that is unique to Douglas County. I think this is something that you're finding across the nonprofit sector right now. 2025 has been a rough year for nonprofits for a variety of reasons, but it certainly has not helped with burnout. And perhaps going along with the next bullet point about aging audiences, many of the leaders at these organizations have been around a long time. They've been doing this work, again, whether paid or for free, for many, many years. And the organizations have really come to rely on them to lead these organizations lead their programming, lead their exhibits, lead their partnerships. And there's concern about succession, there's concern about sustainability. How much longer can we continue to do this? Aging audiences, this is an issue, again, not unique to Douglas County. Nonprofits, I think, across the variety of nonprofit organizations, but especially in arts, culture, and heritage areas, are experiencing a real aging of audiences. They're having trouble getting younger audience members in the door, and they're especially having trouble getting younger donors to help support their work. There's limited capacity and funding. Many organizations have small or no paid staff and experience constant funding and staffing gaps. That said, I think all of these organizations are extremely grateful for the support that they've received from the county and really recognize that this county is doing quite a bit, more than many other counties in the region, to support heritage and history. Uneven visibility. Many of the residents are unaware of local heritage groups. That's something that we were able to find through the surveys, as well as through some of the stakeholder interviews and focus groups that were about, like, the stakeholder was nominated by one organization, but when we asked them about the other partner organizations, they maybe didn't know about them. They only knew about the one that nominated them. So there's often, you sort of very focused on one organization. You go there a lot, you go back over and over, but you're not experiencing the array of different heritage experiences that we have here in Douglas County. And then there is some tension between the organizations. There's some mistrust and concerns, especially over the concerns around Lawrence dominance, the name of the Douglas County Historical Society perhaps being problematic, with the idea that if the Douglas County Historical Society only focuses on Lawrence, that's concerning. Of course, the Douglas County Historical Society does not only focus on Lawrence, but I do think this is a concern, right? People are just a little bit worried, want to make sure that their historical society with their specific geographic focus is getting the attention and support and funding that it needs to be successful. Opportunities that arose and that the different organizations were really excited about included shared digital resources. So this might be a website or a landing page that could host logos and links to the different partner websites, but it would be sort of a landing page for anybody interested in heritage who's coming to the Douglas County area, where they could find out about all the programming at these different historical sites in one place. A shared events calendar is something that was really exciting for folks. They were really interested in this. I think both because it would make it easier for audiences to find events that are going on in Douglas County if they're interested in heritage, but also because it would make it easier to not schedule events on top of each other, because everyone could sort of see when the events are going on and try to, fit themselves into a date or time that was not already taken. A digital resource hub would be something that could also be very beneficial. Many of these stories that the organizations are telling through their programs and their exhibitions are stories that overlap in different ways with other organizations and the stories that they are telling. So they're not the same stories, but they draw on some of the same materials. So if the organizations were able to share photographs, for example, they might be compiled in a different context, tell a different story, but the same photograph could be very useful at the Wakarusa River Valley Museum, for example, and at the Douglas County Historical Society or the Watkins Museum. So having a space where some of these materials could be centrally housed and drawn upon by the different organizations could be very helpful. But as you can see, because there is a little bit of that tension between the organizations, trying to find a neutral way to maintain that website is something that is very much wanted. So we want to think if we can find a way to make that website as neutral as possible, not under the control of one organization. Everybody feels like they have equal access to update it and access it, and there's no special treatment around the digital resources. Shared marketing and IT support. Here we're looking at cost savings through really purchasing larger amounts and then sharing it out to the different organizations. So if we did shared ad buys, for example, You could maybe get a discount because you're buying multiple ads, but then it would be shared out between the different organizations. Shared contract graphic designer or social media coordinator, IT contractor. These were all things that were of interest, especially to some of the smaller organizations who don't have any paid staff. Shared marketing templates was another idea that people had that might be useful. So everyone can sort of use the same basic press release template to get started. And hopefully that helps save a little bit of time when people are trying to get their campaigns going. Collaborative programming, something people were very excited about. I think organizational leaders and volunteers as well as stakeholders. So the idea that if we had maybe a multi-site exhibit or a field trip that takes you from one organization to another on a bus on the weekend, for example, could be really cool, because if you are someone who is just going over and over again to the Watkins Museum because you love it so much, you might hop on that bus on a Sunday and get taken over to the Compton and realize, oh my gosh, I don't only love the Watkins Museum, I also love the Lecompton Historical Society and Museum. And then finally, shared volunteer base and shared fundraising. I think this is one that's maybe the most, this creates the most anxiety, I would say, because we know that our volunteers are such an important resource and our funds are such an important resource. So making sure that the volunteers, if shared, which I think we do recognize could be really beneficial, especially with some of our more specialized volunteers. So, if we need someone with legal experience, right, that might be someone who could give a couple of hours to one organization and a couple of hours to a different one, right? It's not like we need a lot of that legal support, but we do need some, and it is harder to find because it's fairly specialized. That is something that could be of interest, whether that's through a shared volunteer database or a shared volunteer sign-up sheet. And then fundraising, especially fundraising templates, I think are something that could help people get over some of their anxieties around fundraising, especially as federal and state grants are cut. We have to turn to some more grassroots type fundraising where we're doing actual asks of individual people and looking for sponsorships from various businesses. And starting that process, I think, can be very intimidating if you haven't done it before. So giving people the tools they need so that they can really get out there, feel confident, and start doing those asks. Challenges. So yes, there's some fear of losing autonomy, especially from smaller organizations. They don't want to be taken over. They've been doing incredible work, and they don't want to, have that independence lost. I think it's very understandable. Unequal capacity. There is concern that some organizations will take on more labor, but not get as much benefit, even for putting in that extra labor. There's some baggage from past efforts. Sometimes collaborations haven't gone as well as maybe we had hoped in the past. So continuing to think about how we might shape those collaborations really strategically so they go really well this time, I think is something to consider as we move forward. And then just, the challenge that I think we all experience, the limited time and energy, only so many hours in a day. And that, of course, makes it really hard if you have a small organization or even if you have a larger organization. It's really challenging as the need increases and people want to go and experience these historical sites and museums. It's really hard to keep up. So next steps, we talked about a lot of different exciting ideas and opportunities. But because this is still a fairly fragile partnership, I would say, and one that hasn't been fully solidified and made official, I think starting with not a full strategic plan, which often would run for 3 to 5 years, but really just a mini strategic plan, something that's maybe lasts just 1 year, where we sit down together, we set a mission for the partnership, we set a vision for the partnership, we set values for the partnership, and then we outline just 1 or 2 goals. We're not going to do too much. We want to take it easy, not bite off more than we can chew, and decide on what those goals should be, how we're going to do them, what strategies we're going to use to accomplish those goals, and then a couple of objectives to help us understand that we've met those goals or have not met those goals. The areas in which those could take place would be collective fundraising, shared contractors, shared digital resources, shared volunteer base, collaborative programming, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that's something that did come out as something that folks are interested in continuing to try to build into their programming and ensure that we're being as inclusive as possible when we're telling these stories, making sure we're telling stories that touch on all the different communities that make up Douglas County. So again, that's one that I think we didn't talk about it as much in the previous slides, but it did come out as something that was really of interest to the different partners. Once the strategic plan is in place, I think then we could formalize the partnership with an MOU, clearly laying out what membership entails, both in terms of benefits and expectations. Again, the idea here is to not do too much at once, but if we have that plan, people should be able to really clearly understand what they're agreeing to when they sign on to the partnership. Which I think will help, because I think right now it's people are a little not sure of what it means. What would it mean if I was officially part of this partnership? And I do think the Heritage Conservation Council, because it does not do a lot of its own programming, would be a great organization to lead this process. And then finally, setting up regular meetings, whether that's quarterly, if we have time, or again, people already feel burdened, so we don't want to add too much additional work to people's plates. But a biannual meeting might be more reasonable, depending on what people are able to do. But I think as we met with the organizations through this process, we realized that some of the misunderstandings between the organizations really just come from a lack of communication. They're just not getting a chance to sit down and talk enough and really share what they're doing, what their challenges are, how they could potentially help and assist each other. So I think the more we just sit down as a group and have conversations that are really intentional, the better the partnership will go. And finally, I just wanted to share this slide. So we did ask 2 questions about county investment into heritage sector organizations. One, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important do you think it is for Douglas County to invest in preserving and sharing local history? That's the purple. You can see that many people that responded to the survey really felt it was very important. It was very unusual for anyone to say that they did not think it was important at all. And a similar question, Douglas County supports local heritage organizations with modest annual funding. Please rate your support of the county continuing this investment on a scale from 1 to 5. And again, you can see the support for that continued investment is quite high, a little bit lower than just general belief in the importance of preserving and sharing local history. I think because we're starting to talk more specifically and concretely about funds. But you do see that still largely people are very supportive of continued investment, with very few people really saying that they don't want to have that investment continued. Thank you so much. It's been a delight to share this with you. It was wonderful to work with all the partners. They're all incredible. Every single one of these organizations is really doing incredible work for this community. It was just, I felt so grateful every day to get to come and talk with them every time I had an interaction. And also special thanks again to Caitlin for just being such a great project leader. Thank you so much.
Stop sharing.
Sarah. Commissioners, do you have questions for Sarah?
Yeah, I had a question. Has any discussion come up around the World Cup event and perhaps that being a opportunity to collaborate and coordinate websites or advertising or event scheduling?
Yes. So we do have the partners actually working on a special exhibit where they're sharing promotional materials in honor of the World Cup. That's really exciting. I'm not going to try to speak to it. Steve Novak is here and he could speak to it with much greater eloquence than I. But yes, that is in the works. And that's, I think, a really exciting test case for this partnership.
Yeah, through our World Cup's Unified Command, there is a Cultures and Experiences group that's leading that effort.
I'll also add that the county, you all supported just under $20,000 to support the collaborative exhibit for America 250, which will overlap with the World Cup celebration as well. And Steve, would you like to add on to that?
Which is why I'm walking up here right now. I'm Steve Novak, the director of the Douglas County Historical Society and Watkins Museum. And I just wanted to add to that we've also jointly applied for grant funding to support the promotion of that exhibit from Freedom's Frontier. We received that award last year, and we currently have a grant application out for more promotional funding from the state of Kansas, from their tourism marketing grant.
One other question. Have you given any consideration to charging admission to Watkins for 6 or 8 weeks?
No. What we have learned is that you can very aggressively solicit donations without having to make that a barrier, make that admission fee a barrier that would prevent people from coming in. But we found when we had increased activity during the Americans exhibit, we put a direct appeal right in the exhibit, and our donations went way up.
Since these are survey results, I'm curious for those in the actual historical societies, if you ask them directly or if you know from the survey results how they would feel about actually like merging, right, integrating into like one whole, and if you have any kind of feedback results from them individually, since I don't see many of them represented here today.
I can say that the goal of this project is to start the conversation. And I'll also say that I would say the ultimate goal is not to merge. That is not something that's of interest. That's not something that's proposed. It's more of formalizing a partnership with distinct entities. So just clarify that. And then also, this is intended to start this conversation and provide some data that can help support those strategic planning conversations.
Okay, so each entity will still like be their own entity, like across the county. You'll just share resources and you'll have one host site, again, is what I'm hearing for that website, because I heard there would be a website.
Perhaps. And so just also to clarify, and something I wanted to say at the conclusion of Sarah's presentation, those are all just recommendations from Coneflower, in these conversations of things they heard that could be possible. There are still lots of conversations to be had of what would actually work in practice, who would lead certain aspects, all the things you would go about when formalizing something like that. But yeah, so maintaining autonomy is something that I think will be important as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. And so at this point, sorry, Commissioner Dorsey, at this point, each of these individual historical societies, have they not been brought to the table and presented this presentation just yet?
They have. So we hosted on October 15th the public town hall where we had representation from each of the groups where they heard a version of this presentation. And yeah, so we had a good discussion following that. I know from that conversation and from here and seeing the full report all put together, I know probably our first step, like immediate first step, I would like to meet individually with each group to get their direct feedback in an individual setting, and then perhaps schedule a group meeting in December to reflect on all of this as a group and decide what that next step looks like.
And so then at that presentation, did many of them provide feedback?
Yeah, we had a pretty good conversation, and if anyone has anything particular to say, I know we have Eudora, Freedom's Frontier, Lecompton, and Douglas County Historical Society here if anyone has anything specific. But yeah, we had a fairly good discussion at that meeting.
And was it fairly favorable at that time?
I think so. I think there, again, is just that idea of maintaining autonomy. And I really, as kind of a coordinator here in this space and getting kind of that outside perspective, really want to encourage folks to do what is comfortable to them. I don't want to feel anyone to feel coerced into anything. This is really meant to be collaborative, to be supportive of the whole.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you'd like to add.
Eventually, we'll all be standing here.
Thanks. My name is Ben Terwilliger. I'm the Executive Director of the Eudora Area Historical Society. I've been there for almost 15 years now, so I've seen quite a bit of change. And in my experience, it's just night and day difference in terms of collaboration versus when I started versus now. I also interned at the Watkins Museum in the summer of 2010, which was just before Steve Novak was hired. So I saw the condition of the Watkins Museum before Steve and after Steve, and it's absolutely night and day different. I can only speak for myself in that I've greatly appreciated all collaboration with these museums. I don't really have much fear of losing autonomy. Personally, I think our museum will always be an independent organization. We're very proud of that. However, I'm also very thrilled to work with the Watkins Museum particularly, or anyone else. The Watkins Museum and through Steve, they've been unimaginably generous to our museum in terms of sharing resources. I have never felt, quote unquote, dominated by them. I can understand that there could be historical concerns of that Lawrence is kind of the centerpiece, but I don't think my membership feels that way anymore. I don't think anyone has felt that way under Steve Novak's leadership. From my perspective, they've given so much, and there's no possible way that we could ever repay them. So I personally appreciate collaboration. I hope it goes further. I hope we work together more. And yeah, I'm just really excited. I appreciate the county support and all the survey results as well. So that's just my 2 cents. I greatly appreciate the collaboration. I think we could do more, and I'd like to do more. So that's just me. Thanks.
That actually leads into kind of something I was going to ask about is we've got these survey results and they're a moment in time, but we see a lot of the themes that have been, within these partners for a long time. But I'm curious about the conversations and how they felt in a trajectory, because in kind of to Ben's point, I don't think we would have been talking about partnering 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I really see that I've seen a lot of change in that and trust being built. And one set of survey results won't get that, but I don't know if other partners or Paul wanted to speak to kind of how does the trajectory feel like?
I'll start with that. And I know that Paul is going to hit what he says will dovetail right into mine, because this was really kind of the discussion we ended up having following the presentation. Was we started to realize that where there were areas where our combined strength would be more impactful. And one of those is tourism. One of the facts that was shared as part of the background research for the study was in the state of Kansas, 68% of tourism is generated by interest in heritage and historic sites. That's the single largest number or a reason why tourists visit Kansas. And we have a great inventory of historic sites here, but we don't speak together. So it's easy for some sites to be overlooked or for people coming in from outside to not know how rich that experience can be here. So we thought about that as an opportunity. We also realized that the county is already providing a kind of infrastructure to support working together through the Heritage Conservation Council, and that we're not really taking advantage of that opportunity too, because we've realized that the days of sticking it out on our own are really probably coming to a close, and a new model that helps us all lift each other up and use the resources that we have as wisely as possible for the biggest possible benefit for as much of the county as possible is really probably the way to make sure that all of our organizations can be sustained.
Paul Bonmeyer from Lecompton. I just want to say that the collaboration began when Steve Jensen was head of the Watkins Museum, because each one of us took a day at the Douglas County Fair, and Martha Parker represented Clinton and Mrs. Long was Eudora. I can't remember who was in Baldwin, but we shared all the items that we had to sell and then divided up the proceeds. So that happened a long time ago.
I may have worked that booth as well, Mr. Bond.
Pardon?
I may have worked that booth as well back in the day.
Anyway, that happened. I do want to say that the support that Douglas County gives to its history is unbelievable in comparison to what other counties do. And I hope it's because Douglas County realizes, and I ask you this question, we would not be celebrating 250 years of American history had not the decisions made in the 1850s in Douglas County turned out differently. That's a fact. Because if the Lecompton Constitution had been approved, what would have happened to this nation? Nobody recognizes that. But that's a fact. The other fact that I want to say, and you've heard me say this, we had a couple in from Baldwin, and they said they'd been to Fort Sumter. And the guide was telling them all about Fort Sumter. And the people from Baldwin were shaking their heads no. So the guide came over and he says, how come you were shaking your heads no all the time? And they said, well, you know, Kansas is the birthplace of the Civil War, not South Carolina. The guide replied in these exact words, yes, we know that, but if we told them that, they wouldn't come here. All of this is Douglas County. Kevin Costner, nationally known actor, whatever. Did all of you see the program that he put on? He had 6 series on how the West was won. One of them was on Bleeding Kansas. And it talked all about Osawatomie, Blackjack, Lawrence, and Lecompton.
Thank you, Paul.
And nobody knows about it. If it occurred in Texas, the whole world would know about it.
Thank you.
So
I have a question for Sarah, and it's about the needs assessment and some specifics about methodology. So, I mean, you've done these before. What's your expectation for the amount of people who would respond to a survey for it to be actionable evidence?
So yeah, so it's definitely not statistically relevant. Like this wouldn't pass a p-value test, but lots of surveys I think still reveal trend data. So I would say it's hard to say. I would say that we know that this survey was largely circulated, the county circulated it, but it was also circulated by the different organizations, which means that those organizations are sending it to people who are already on their listservs, already follow their social media. So there's definitely a bias there. So yeah, I mean, I think you have to take that for what it's worth. So I would like, for me, I would dampen the, I would dampen those statistical I would dampen those survey responses slightly in terms of how excited people are about heritage and history and the investment of the county in those numbers. But I would also say that that trend is probably still there, right? So it's probably less, but it's probably still there. We don't have statistical data on it, that said.
So we're a county of 120,000 people.
Yeah.
And we had 110 respond, and you're saying that's enough of a trend to make decisions on?
You can make decisions on it or not. I don't think that's for me to say. I mean, I think we can only do the surveys we can get, right? Like we really tried. We sure tried. Your marketing people tried. All of our organizations of marketing people tried. It's just hard. We didn't have an incentive for the survey, which is something that sometimes helps. We didn't have budget for that. So I think, yeah, you just got to look at the numbers as you see them. I do think in the full report, the information that Steve was mentioning is cited in that report about a study that was done by the state about why people come to Kansas. And what he is saying is correct, that people are most drawn to Kansas. They're choosing Kansas over other nearby states because of heritage and historical sites. And we also know there's been a lot of national funds put into trying to assess the economic value of arts and culture and heritage sites on a community. So Arts and Prosperity is a giant survey that's been run for several years now. I think it's in its 6th version. And so that shows that there is significant economic benefit to these organizations in your community. So, I mean, I think we're trying to provide different kinds of data for you to consider when you're trying to make that decision about whether you should be investing in these organizations. So I don't think you should look at just that one survey question. I think you should look at all that data.
In terms of funding from the county commission, I feel greater confidence in allocating those dollars because of the conversations around partnership and the action that's happening around partnerships there. I love the joint advertising piece that was put out. I think that's kind of been a conversation that's happened at the commission level, that we really want to see groups collaborating and working together and supporting each other. And I think this is the model that I have pointed to with other partners to say, this is what gives us confidence in those dollars, is that we feel like they're being spread well and benefiting each other and lifting all others up. I also want to say we have a member of the Union Sowers Cemetery Board here. So cemetery boards, are not in this list of 7. They don't get dollars from the county commission budget. They do get taxpayer dollars because the cemetery districts are taxing authorities. They only occur in my district. I'm pretty sure I have all of them. So it's a little unique, and others might not be that aware of it. But that's another piece of heritage. Certainly doesn't have the staff support and such, volunteer led. But I just wanted to give a shout out to that also.
I just wanted to pull on the tourism thread a little bit more, because I do think that it doesn't surprise me to learn that there's, Kansas statistical data that is a significant draw here. And Paul, I feel inspired by your story, so I'll share, but 15 years ago when I moved to New York City, and I'm from here, very proud townie kid who thought that only people who grew up here knew our history. That was just the bubble that I was in. And I went and I interviewed for a job to be a nanny. And when the dad heard where I was from, he got so excited, which I assumed was because the Jayhawks, because that's usually what people clock about us. And then he proceeded to nerd out for 20 minutes about all the cool sites in Douglas County, including and historical events that had happened there, including Blackjack Battlefield and the Lecompton Constitution. And so I remember that moment because I was like, oh, wow, like our story really does. I was inundated with those stories growing up here. It was a huge part of my education curriculum, but my presumption was that nobody else really knew about it. And so I think that it doesn't really surprise me that tourism is such a big draw around heritage and history here. And it feels like currently that's like a real untapped channel to some degree, both in terms of I don't know exactly what local partnerships look like with Explore Lawrence as sort of our major tourism industry partner, or other regional sort of convention bureaus and stuff. And I mean, FF, I always forget the correct order of letters, but the Freedoms Frontier, on some level facilitates some of that. But I just, on a statewide and regional level, really feel like there has to be some opportunities, and I hope for the forward trajectory of this collaboration to think about what it looks like to be able to tap into that more, both in terms of pulling down possible state-related resources related to tourism, which can be best done in a coordinated effort. And if it's got a broader, wider impact, then maybe there's more possibility for success in trying to pull down some of those tourism funds. And really demanding the attention of the Kansas Department of Commerce around some of their tourism efforts, and what a unique and densely populated place of heritage sites and like true legacy stories that exist here. And so I'm really interested to see and hear how some of those conversations might go. And it goes along with, the marketing and pooling the sort of resources in a more connected way. It helps maximize tourism, right? And give more, you're casting a wider net that's going to catch more people interested in multiple sites. And maybe they only knew about one to begin with, but learned about the other. So I think I see a lot of those themes in a lot of the feedback we're reading in this report and needs assessment, that there's a lot of opportunity for connecting the dots more. And that to me lends itself to really leaning into tourism and how to leverage that as an economic, the facts are in here about how we know statewide what the economic impact is. That's probably pretty difficult to measure on a more localized level. And I'm not by any means suggesting that or that it's worth anybody's time or effort. But I think using those points to leverage to traditional economic development partners, tourism industry and business industry and hospitality partners about those things seems like a natural alignment to me, and like it'll be far more possible and powerful when it's if it's the united front of individual sites who all have their own stories to tell, but recognizing the power of the fact that all of these stories that are told and represented here do have connection points and do have overlap, and it tells a fuller, more holistic story. And I'm excited about that part, and I just want to encourage the partners to really continue to pursue the collaboration and thinking about what each other's strengths are that you bring to the table. And I hope that this needs assessment feels like a good place to look back to, and specifically in the strengths area, and recognize sort of what the unique strengths of each individual partner are, and what are some things that have been have been a struggle that maybe somebody else around that table has a good, solid capacity and skill set for, that can help alleviate some of the burden. So I think that there's some trade-offs there, and really knowing what everybody brings to bear and letting go of things that feel either duplicative, outdated, or burdensome in a way that is hard. And change is hard, right? And we talk about that a lot here. And but I just encourage partners to keep going and thinking about how you can maximize your impact together, and connecting all the different threads of the stories that really do go together and have impact. And I love the idea of us telling whole stories and honest stories and whole truths. And so the, connected tours and maps, that sort of thing, I think people will eat that up if we can really do some strong marketing around it. And to Commissioner Dorsey's point, we have some real good opportunities coming in some coming seasons to sort of launch some of those opportunities, I think.
Okay, there's no other questions. This is not an action item, but we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to provide public comment? Okay, anyone online, Sarah? No one online. Okay. I'll just make one comment. It does seem like when I look through the goals of the project, define existing strengths and needs of the heritage organizations currently supported annually by Douglas County. It does seem like you have enough data from the different organizations on that. I'm hesitant to say we have community connection on that. And that might be a next step. How do we figure out how our community wants our historical organizations to function? That would be helpful to us maybe, and probably to you all in some way. The other goal was continued strength and collaboration. It seems like you've met that. And then make recommendations for short and long-term actions to ensure sustainability. That one I'm a little hinky on yet. because it did really feel like the needs assessment was influenced by the partners mostly and not the wider community on the whole. And I understand that was just part of the methodology. It's just what was in there and who was available. But I want to caution us a little bit of making, funding and policy decisions based on that limited scope there. And so just want to make that comment. So, but appreciate the work that our heritage partners do, and Caitlin, the work you're doing to bring them together. Just want to offer that next challenge of how do we, there's something happening that we're not getting more of the community engaged. We say they really want it. It's very important. But we didn't have many people respond. So that would be something to sort of figure out what's going on there. Anything else, commissioners? Okay. That ends our regular agenda. We'll move on to appointments. I did not check. last week.
Commissioners, I don't have anything formal for you. I will put one forth for next week. You did hear from a representative that would fill the
Got that today.
Grant
Right.
Township spot, which is not really Grant Township. Remember, we said we gave them an ability to try to get somebody else. So you can vote on that one tonight, or we can talk about it next week.
We also have one for 4-H that came, Fair Board that
Fair
came
Board.
across
It's
today.
Brenna Wolf.
That's the same one. Okay.
Yeah. But you just got it, so we can put it forward to next week if you'd like more time.
Yeah, I opened it like right before this.
Yeah.
And so I plan to reach out to her because I know her and just it's my district, and I'll be ready next week.
Okay. So no appointments. We'll move on to Commissioner Administrator Miscellaneous, and we start with Sarah's memo.
Thanks, Commissioners. My updated memo is attached. There's lots of dates coming on, and there's several, there's a drug court graduation. There are 2 events at the Ivan Boyd Prairie Preservation coming up. Next Wednesday, there's a ribbon cutting for the Children's Community Center. And then the canvas, your general election canvas will be on Monday, November 17th at 9. So please let me know if you cannot attend that. Wanted to give you a quick update. We heard from the Ballard Center on one of their ARPA projects, so we included that in there, as well as some just of our regular reporting. Next week, we do not have a work session, in hopes there that some of you may want to attend that ribbon cutting. And we will have a regular session agenda, and then just letting folks know that on the 26th, the day before Thanksgiving, we will not be meeting. That's all I have, Commissioners.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, any miscellaneous items?
Okay, I wonder how we're going to get enough responders to the upcoming Douglas County Solid Waste Survey if we can only get 110 people to talk about heritage.
You have an
People love
idea?
trash. Maybe people really love trash.
Okay. All right. With that, we are adjourned.